The next two teams that I'll cover in this series are V-Shart and Haas. This video will probably be the shortest video in the series and will probably get about 3.5 views in total because there's literally nothing interesting about these two teams other than the wacky jokes I'll probably make about them. But I haven't written the rest of the script yet, so I don't even know if I can make a sunny joke about them. So stay tuned as I try to make the two most boring teams on the grid seem exciting, and tell me in the comments if I've succeeded. Well, I haven't succeeded so far since I've started off the video by saying that video will be boring, which is the exact opposite of what you're supposed to do. So instead, I'll start off by making an absurd claim in a loud voice involving probably a large sum of money, whilst a large bold font captions flash across the screen and a cash register sound probably plays at some point. I've been looking into the performance of two Formula 1 teams with budgets up to $140 million, and what I found will shock you. Now that I've made a ritual sacrifice to the YouTube gods, let's talk about V-Shart. They have cars, two of them in fact, they've got a steering wheel, that'll help things like getting around the corners. Hang on, I'm getting a call. What? You want me to take the videos seriously? I can't do 8 minutes on these teams. They're the most boring teams on the grid. It's like asking me to do an 8-minute video on the history of the microwave. Alright, I'll talk about the drivers then. I'm not sure who was calling me since this channel is a one-person operation, but it was very convenient that I had all the responses to the caller already written in the script. Anyway, the driver lineup is something notable. V-Shart has signed Isaac Hadjar to drive alongside Yuki Tsunoda. This is a clever decision from Red Bull, as keeping Tsunoda in that team for so long gives them a really good benchmark to test their drivers against. If they beat Tsunoda, give them the Red Bull. If they don't beat Tsunoda, give them the Renault Clio Cup. Of course, Lawson didn't beat Tsunoda, but his junior career and a few standout races in F1 have been enough to convince Red Bull to give him a go. Isaac Hadjar has been exciting to watch in the junior championships, so he'll be a great addition to the team I'm sure, but he certainly doesn't give me the impression of being a future world champion, but it will look great hopping from between teams and finishing 13th for the next 5 years before being shuffled out of a seat, the usual fate of Red Bull young drivers. In terms of car performance, don't expect anything exciting from V-Shart either. They are a team which by their very purpose is a midfield team. They have no World Championship aspirations, they're a junior team and their purpose is to not be as good as Red Bull and to have two cars capable of circulating in the field at a pace comparable to the other cars on the grid, so the drivers can do a little bit of side-by-side racing with some F1 drivers. They are a team which exists solely to serve another team, and a team which therefore has done almost nothing exciting in their entire history since being bought by Red Bull, with only a couple of exceptions at Monza. They are very much the team least deserving of a place on the F1 grid, and the team that has ruined the good name of Minardi. Whether you call it Toro Rosso, AlphaTauri or V-Shart, it's still the same empty vessel as usual. So what about Haas? A team that people only support either because they're American or because they watched Drive to Survive and heard Günther Steiner's Fox Smash Door. And with Steiner now gone, that crowd is gone too. A team where the owner seems to have no interest in Formula 1 yet continues on regardless. Much like the Sauber team this year, Haas has no drivers from the previous year in their car, unless you count Ollie Behrman's couple of stand-in performances. This means from a setup perspective they're starting from somewhat of a blank sheet, and with no driver truly familiar with a car, meaning that each race will be a new discovery. Luckily, Esteban Ocon has solid experience and is a highly respectable driver, and it was a genius decision from Haas to sign Ocon, and a moronic decision from Alpine to get rid of him for the nepo baby they replaced him with. Of course, the F1 media loves to hate Esteban Ocon because Esteban Ocon is one of the only F1 drivers who's come from a working class family, something the F1 media's Rich Boys Club could never handle, so they have a special hatred for Esteban Ocon as a result. Of course, there's also the fact that he's French, which the Brits still can't get over for some reason. A lot of people seem to hate the French for basically no reason, because the French are actually completely fine. Most anti-French sentiment comes from America because they were annoyed that the French did not invade Iraq with them, and decades later we still have people repeating Iraq War era anti-French propaganda, further proving that Charles de Gaulle was right all along. But what about car development? Haas's testing performance has shown nothing but poor results, with Ollie Behrman finishing dead last. But of course, you don't draw conclusions from testing. But overall, you can't expect much from Haas this year. It was Haas in 2021 who did literally zero development work on the car as new regulations were coming for the following year, and it did somewhat pay off. You can very much expect that Haas will be at the bottom of the midfield or joining Sauber at the back of the pack. I tried to ask Charles de Gaulle what he thought about Haas and their 2025 development program, but his family told me that he's been dead since 1970 and please stop contacting us about Formula 1. Haas is a team in the near future which will probably become Toyota anyway. Toyota are already working with the team and they've been greatly expanding their motorsport program, and Gene Haas will finally be able to offload the F1 team he hates so much. Haas and Vichat are genuinely the two most boring F1 teams on the grid. Perhaps the most boring teams in history. At least in Haas's early years they had the rich energy shit show to keep us entertained, and sometimes their car would explode. But every year they've become more and more boring. By 2030, if they aren't bought out by Toyota, they'll have a livery that's just pure beige without any sponsors, or that weird primer looking grey colour people insist on buying cars in for some reason. Haas is the Formula 1 equivalent of a Honda CR-V. Most people forget they even exist. You just look at that team and think, why bother? Sauber, for example, might be having poor performance, but you look at that team and you see history, you see passion, you see a reason for them being there. Haas is a team which is confused by its own existence. A team which, like Vichat, really shouldn't exist. Not a single person on this planet is passionate about Haas. Their purpose is truly to round out the numbers on the F1 grid. They're the filler, they occupy space and that's all. Haas does the exact same job that this section of the script I'm writing does. It occupies space so that it can make up the video 8 minutes long, or in the case of Haas, it occupies grid slots so they can claim there's 20 cars racing in Formula 1. They'll probably get more support if they just put random F2 cars on the grid to round up the numbers. Probably be a faster car as well than what Haas can produce. The good news for the rest of the series is that we've only got teams that actually matter to cover now. Alpine is a hilarious shit show to talk about. Aston Martin is looking incredibly spicy at the moment. And then of course there's the top teams. Red Bull on the way down? Maybe. Who knows? Ferrari. Now that is a spicy driver lineup indeed. McLaren. They're actually in quite a sticky situation, funnily enough. And Mercedes. They're the real cat amongst the pigeons because who knows where they could possibly be. Ah, we've reached 8 minutes. Perfect. Okay, bye.